I landed my dream job. Finally, I'm ready to prove myself. But there's one little problem. My family. I remember the exact moment I got the offer letter. I was standing at the bus stop, the sky still tinged with the pale gold of early morning, my hands shaking as I opened the email. The words blurred through my tears. "We're pleased to offer you the position." After months of interviews, of second-guessing my worth, of late-night pep talks to myself in bathroom mirrors, it finally happened. I got the job. Not just any job. It was with Larkin Vale, one of the top sustainability firms in the country. Remote position, full benefits, real impact. It was everything I had worked toward in college. I had clawed my way here without connections, without a safety net, just sheer persistence. I wanted to scream and cry and call someone. And I did. I called my mom. Her voice crackled on the line like always, more distracted than warm. Oh, that company you were talking about? Yeah. Well, good for you. Let's hope you can actually keep it this time. The air left my lungs. She didn't mean it cruelly. At least she never thought she did. But that's the thing with my family. Their doubt isn't loud. It's quiet. It's constant. And it's coated in fake concern. Growing up in our house felt like walking barefoot on glass. Not because we were poor or struggling. No, we were just fine. 2-story house, dinner at the table, church on Sundays. But success, always felt like a threat. My older brother Mark was the golden child, the firstborn, the reliable one. He followed the script. High school, trade school, steady job in HVAC, married at 25, 2 kids before 30. He was the proof that stability works. I was the opposite. Art major turned environmental science geek, moved cities twice, never settled. Down. I lived in shared apartments, took on freelance gigs, and pushed toward a vision no one in my family understood. They didn't say it outright, but the message was always there. You're wasting your time. Why can't you just be normal? Your brother is doing fine. Why can't you be more like him? So when I got the job, I thought, maybe this will change things. Maybe they'll finally see me. At first, they played nice. There was a group dinner the weekend before I officially started. My mom made her famous lasagna. Dad grilled steak even though I didn't eat red meat, and Mark brought his usual smugness wrapped in a tight-lipped smile. "So, you'll be working from home?" "That's cute," he said, cutting into his steak. "Must be nice to wear pajamas all day and still call it a job." I laughed it off, pretending it didn't sting. Mom chimed in with a well-meaning, "Just make sure you don't slack off. Working from home can make you lazy." I read that somewhere. Then came the kicker. My Aunt Susan, who always had to speak like she was narrating a warning tale for some invisible audience. Hope this one sticks. You know how girls these days get all excited and then, boom, burnout. Burnout? I had busted my ass for this job. I had gone without health insurance for 8 months. I had eaten instant noodles for weeks to afford prep courses for my interviews. I wasn't about to let their words chip away at what I'd built. But that was just the beginning. The sabotage started small. A missed phone call during my first team, onboarding. My mom had accidentally called 5 times in a row, breaking my do not disturb settings. "Oh, you were in a meeting?" "I didn't know," she said, except I had reminded her that morning. I had even sent her a text with my schedule. Then, my dad showed up unexpectedly on a Tuesday afternoon. I was on a client call, headset on, mid-sentence, when the doorbell rang over and over, loud and relentless. When I finally opened the door, flustered and apologetic, he stood there holding a toolbox. "Thought I'd fix that leaky faucet you mentioned last month." No warning, no appointment, just intrusion. Every boundary I tried to set was met with passive-aggressive confusion. You think you're too important to talk to your own parents now? We raised you, and now you're acting all big city boss girl. It wasn't just emotional. Sabotage either. One evening, I got a message from my supervisor. Hey, just a heads up. Someone sent a strange email to the team inbox claiming you padded your resume. We know it's bogus, but we're flagging it for HR documentation just in case. I stared at the screen, heart pounding. The email was anonymous, of course. But the details, the phrasing, it was too familiar. My cousin Tanya had once said, the exact same words at a family barbecue when I explained my degree. Sounds like you're fluffing it up to sound more important than it is. I didn't say anything to my family that night. I just sat in silence, staring at the flickering kitchen light, feeling the weight of betrayal pressing into my chest. People think sabotage always looks like screaming matches and dramatic fights. But sometimes it's 1,000 paper cuts. It's whispers that become rumors. It's accidental disruptions and carefully timed inconveniences. It's people who claim to love you, quietly hoping you fail. Because if you succeed, what does that say about the life they settled for? I should have broken down. I almost did. But somewhere in the pit of all that disappointment, a fire sparked. I wasn't going to let them win. They wanted me small. I was going to grow so loud they couldn't ignore me. They wanted me to give up. I was going to thrive harder, smarter, sharper. And most of all, I was going to do it with receipts. Because if they wanted to play games, I was finally ready to play back. People often ask, why would your own family try to sabotage you? It's not a simple question to answer, because the truth is, it doesn't always come from hatred. Sometimes it comes from fear, from insecurity, from the need to control what they don't understand. At least, that's how I've tried to explain it to myself. The deeper I sank into the job, the more cracks began to show in my family's facade. Their support, if you could call it that, wasn't just fragile. It was conditional. As long as I stayed unsure of myself, as long as I needed their validation, they felt in control. But the moment I started owning my space, the moment I stopped apologizing for my ambition, it was like a threat to their entire sense of identity. Mark was the first to show his hand. He invited me to grab lunch during work hours, framing it like a sibling catch-up. I said I couldn't, that I had back-to-back virtual client calls. He rolled his eyes, loud enough for me to hear it through the phone. Oh, come on, it's just Zoom. You can talk to real people later. When I declined again, he muttered, "You've changed," and hung up. Later that evening, I saw a vague post from him on Facebook. Some people get a little money and suddenly think they're royalty. Stay humble. It didn't have my name, but everyone in our circle could read between the lines. The comment section had family chiming in, adding fuel to the fire. My aunt said, "Some kids forget where they come from." My cousin added a laughing emoji. It stung, not because they misunderstood me, but because I realized they never tried to understand me to begin with. And then came the incident with the client files. One night, while I was finishing a report, I received a call from my manager. "Hey, just checking. Did you mean to send the draft with internal notes still visible?" I froze. What? I opened the file I had submitted that afternoon. The correct version was on my desktop, perfectly scrubbed and finalized. But the one that had been emailed out included highlighted internal flags, team feedback, and even a sarcastic comment I had written to myself about a miscommunication. I didn't make that mistake. I double-checked everything, and that's when I remembered. I had left my laptop at my parents' house for a few hours the day before. I had gone out to pick up groceries for my mom, trying to be helpful. The laptop was closed but logged in. I trusted they wouldn't touch it. Now I wasn't so sure. I confronted my mom that night, gently, carefully. "Hey, did anyone use my computer yesterday?" She looked up from folding laundry, pretending to think. I think your dad opened it to look for the Wi-Fi password or something. Why? My dad, who barely knew how to send a text message, used my company-issued laptop to look for Wi-Fi? Something weird happened with my files. Her hand stilled for a second, then resumed folding. Well, maybe if you weren't so secretive all the time, this stuff wouldn't happen. That was her answer. They didn't want me to succeed. Not really. They wanted me close, contained, small. I started tracing the pattern, all the little things that had felt off over the past few weeks. My work mail started getting rerouted to my dad's old mailing address, where I used to live and where they had access. Someone must have submitted a change request without my knowledge. A potential freelance offer I was excited about never came through. When I reached out, the contact said, "We heard you might not be taking on outside projects anymore. Your cousin mentioned it." I never told her anything of the sort. One morning, my internet mysteriously went out right before a client presentation. The technician said the router had been accidentally reset to factory settings that morning. And the emotional toll was beginning to build. I wasn't sleeping. My appetite disappeared. I second-guessed every email I sent, every sentence I wrote. I started working from cafes or friends' places just to escape the tension. But no matter how far I went, I felt like my family's judgment followed me. Their silence was the worst part. Not once did they ask how the job was going. Not once did they celebrate a small win or offer encouragement. Instead, they acted like I was playing, dress up in adult clothes, waiting for me to trip so they could say, "We told you so." One night, I hit my breaking point. I was sitting on my apartment floor, laptop in front of me, reviewing team feedback. One of my teammates had written, "Your insights changed the direction of our entire project. We're lucky to have you." And I burst into tears. Not because of the compliment, but because it felt like I was finally seen. Something my own family had never done. I cried for the version of me that used to beg for approval. I cried for the years I spent dimming my light so they wouldn't feel threatened. I cried because I realized I could either keep seeking their acceptance or I could protect my peace, but not both. That night, I made a promise to myself. They wanted me to fall, I'd fly, and they'd be forced to watch. Something shifted in me after that night. It wasn't rage. It wasn't even sadness anymore. It was focus, sharp, cold, and undeniable. I realized that my family didn't need to be confronted with yelling and accusations. They needed to be outmaneuvered. And if there's one thing I had learned from years of tiptoeing around their judgments, it was exactly how to read their moves before they made them. I stopped sharing details. No more telling them about work presentations. No more casual updates about deadlines, clients, or new ideas. When my mom called to ask, "How's the little job going?" I just smiled through the phone and said, "Oh, same old, same old. They didn't need ammunition. And I stopped supplying it. It was harder than I thought. That ache to be seen and recognized by your own blood runs deep." But I reminded myself, they weren't listening to celebrate. They were listening to compare, to compete, to control. So I let silence speak. I knew they would keep trying, especially since they thought I was still playing checkers. But I had started playing chess. I created a new encrypted folder on my laptop for all sensitive documents. I enabled two-factor authentication on every device, changed passwords, and set up digital traps, alerts that would notify me if anyone accessed certain files. Sure enough, 3 days after visiting home again, purely out of obligation, I received a ping. Someone had opened a document titled 2024 Budget Draft, Confidential. It was a dummy file. Empty, except for one planted sentence. This file contains incorrect numbers and should not be used for client presentations. The next day, my cousin Tanya messaged me. "Hey, saw your name mentioned on a Reddit thread about resume fraud. Everything okay?" I smiled. I had planted that sentence to see if someone would leak it or try to use it against me. And now I had my proof. They were watching me. But I was watching back. The company I worked for had a yearly innovation challenge, an internal competition where employees pitched ideas to improve operations or expand services. Winning meant a grant, a bonus, and an optional spotlight interview on the company's main page. I hadn't planned on participating at first. Too risky, too public. But now I had a reason. I began working on my pitch in secret. Not at home, not on work computers. I took my laptop to a quiet park near the lake. Late evenings after work, headphones in, nose buried in research. My idea? A system to reduce paper waste in client onboarding by integrating AI into internal process mapping. Efficient, scalable, and tied perfectly into our firm's eco-conscious brand. I tested it, refined it, and had a prototype built with a friend. From grad school, under a pseudonym, just to avoid family snooping. 2 weeks later, I submitted it. 3 weeks after that, I got the email. "Congratulations. You've been selected as one of the finalists. We'd love for you to present at next month's showcase." I sat in stunned silence, phone shaking in my hand. They picked me, and they'd be featuring me. Publicly. Perfect. I didn't tell a soul, in my family. Not even in passing. The event was live-streamed, of course, but I knew my mom followed my company's socials and had alerts turned on. She'd see the post. So would Mark. So would all the cousins who rolled their eyes when I talked about my liberal arts crap and do-gooder causes. I made sure my presentation was airtight, rehearsed every slide, every pause, every pivot. I didn't speak with arrogance. I spoke with clarity, with evidence, with passion. When the Q&A came, I handled the board's questions with poise, and when the moderator ended the session by asking, "What motivates you to keep pushing forward?" I looked directly into the camera and said, "I come from a family that doesn't always understand what I do. For a long time, I thought that meant I wasn't enough. But I've learned, just because someone doesn't see your worth doesn't mean it's not there. Sometimes you just have to prove it to yourself first." I held the gaze. Not for them, for me. The next morning, my phone blew up. LinkedIn messages. Company-wide kudos. An email from the CFO thanking me personally for advancing the company's green mission. And then, the texts. From my cousin, Did. "You really invent that system? Like, yourself?" From Mark. "Saw your company post. Guess you're doing okay." From Mom. "Call me." I waited. 2 days, then 3, and finally I called her back. She picked up on the second ring. Her tone was careful. Too sweet. "I saw that video. You looked very professional up there." "Thanks," I said, keeping my voice even. "We had no idea you were working on something that important." There it was, the unspoken truth. If they had known, they would have found a way to stop it. She asked if I could come over for dinner. Said she'd made my favorite. I declined. Told her I had plans, with coworkers. She paused, surprised. "Oh, well, maybe another time." I smiled after I hung up. It wasn't about revenge for the sake of pain. It was about taking back control. About proving, not just to them, but to myself, that I didn't need their approval to be brilliant, to be seen, to matter. They tried to sabotage my future. I turned their sabotage into fuel. And now I was just getting started. The thing about winning, especially when no one believed in you, is that it doesn't always feel like fireworks. Sometimes it's quieter. Like a door finally closing, or a breath you didn't realize you'd been holding. Finally released. That's how it felt when I got the official email from corporate. "Congratulations. Your proposal has been selected for full development and implementation. Your bonus will be reflected in this month's statement. The executive team would like to schedule an internal spotlight interview next week. I just sat there for a moment, blinking at the screen. No screaming, no jumping, just this deep, grounded sense of I did it. I didn't call anyone. I didn't post about it. I just stood up, walked to my tiny kitchen, poured myself a glass of water, and toasted the version of me who didn't give up. A week later, the interview went live on the company blog and social channels. My name was everywhere. There was even a small write-up in an industry magazine highlighting my work as an innovative force in sustainable tech. The recognition didn't go to my head. If anything, it just affirmed what I'd known deep down. I was never the problem. I was just surrounded by people too afraid of what I might become if I fully bloomed. And now, they were watching me bloom anyway. It didn't take long for the family to shift. The same people who had once mocked my choices were now suddenly curious. Mark sent me a DM on Instagram, which he never used, saying, "Hey, can we catch up? Sometime? I'd love to hear more about your work." Tanya, my cousin, posted a screenshot of my company's announcement on her story, with the caption, "My cousin doing big things, so proud." Funny how quickly people change their tune when they realize they're no longer dealing with the underdog. But the most surprising shift came from my mom. She invited me over for dinner again. I didn't want to go. I was still raw, still holding the weight of everything they'd done. But something in her voice was different this time. Not manipulative, not performative, just quiet. So I went. The house looked the same. Same beige carpet, same worn-out couch, same faint smell of lemon cleaner. But the energy was different. For once, no one asked about my little job. No one cracked jokes about remote work or real careers. We sat down to eat. Just me and Mom. She was unusually reserved, polite, careful with her words. Halfway through dinner, she set her fork down and said, "I need to apologize." I looked up, surprised. For everything. The way we doubted you. The things we said, or didn't say. We were wrong. Silence fell between us. I didn't rush to fill it. She continued, "I think we were scared. You were doing something none of us understood. And instead of trying to learn, we judged. That wasn't fair." Tears pricked my eyes, but I didn't let them fall. I just nodded. "I know," I said softly. And I did know. Fear doesn't excuse their behavior, but it explains it. They were afraid I'd leave them behind, that my success would force them to confront their own limitations. And, in a way, it did. She reached across the table and squeezed my hand. "I'm proud of you, truly." For the first time, I believed she meant it. Not everything magically changed after that. Some family members still kept their distance, unsure how to interact with the new me. Some never apologized, and maybe they never will. But I stopped, needing their approval to feel whole. I started measuring my worth by my own standard, not by how loud they clapped, or if they clapped at all. Because here's the thing, you don't owe anyone your failure just because they're uncomfortable with your success. The true triumph wasn't the bonus, the spotlight, or the email from the executive team. It was the way I started walking through life, with my shoulders back, with my head high, with no more shrinking to fit into boxes I was never meant to occupy. I made peace with the fact that not everyone would understand my path, and that's okay. It's mine. I had reclaimed the story they tried to rewrite, and now I was the author again. People think revenge is about fire, about destroying the people who hurt you. But real revenge, the kind that actually satisfies, it's quieter. It's standing in the fullness of who you are, unshaken, while the people who tried to break you have to watch you rise anyway. And that's what this journey taught me. I used to believe that family was sacred, that blood loyalty meant unconditional support. But I've learned that family isn't defined by last names or shared dinner tables. It's defined by who shows up for you when you're breaking, and who hands you the hammer when they see your cracks. Sometimes the hardest betrayal doesn't come from strangers. It comes from the people you thought were supposed to be your home. My family's sabotage shook me. It made me question everything: my worth, my abilities, my future. But it also sharpened me. I learned how to move in silence, how to trust my instincts, how to stop giving unearned access to people just because we share DNA. Most importantly, I learned this: you are allowed to outgrow your origin story. You are allowed to want more, even if the people around you don't understand that hunger. You're allowed to break cycles, to chase dreams, to write a different ending than the one they imagined for you. I used to think I had to choose between chasing my future and preserving my family's comfort. But that choice was never mine to carry. Their discomfort was never my burden. The road wasn't easy. There were nights I wanted to give up. Days where I felt like maybe they were right about me, that I was too much, too ambitious, too different. But then I'd look at the small wins, the praise from a teammate, the progress on a project, the way my own voice sounded stronger in meetings. And I'd remember, they don't get to define you. You do. That truth became my anchor. To anyone listening who's felt the same sting, that quiet sabotage, that passive-aggressive doubt from those you love, I want you to know, you are not alone. There are so many of us out here, fighting to believe in ourselves, when the voices closest to us whisper that we shouldn't. But keep going. Let their doubt become your discipline. Let their silence become your space to grow. Let their resistance become the reason you push harder, because success built in isolation is still success. And healing doesn't require their apology, just your decision to stop bleeding for their comfort. I've learned that resilience isn't about being tough all the time. It's about being soft where it matters, and steel where it counts. It's crying after a meeting and still showing up for the next one. It's shaking while you speak, but speaking anyway. It's knowing they're watching and choosing to walk forward anyway. Not to spite them, but to free yourself. My hope is that you, too, will find that freedom, that you'll stop waiting for them to clap, that you'll build a life so loud with joy, purpose, and power that even their silence becomes irrelevant. And if you're in the middle of the storm right now, if your own family is the thunder trying to drown you out, hold tight. The storm will pass, and when it does, you won't just survive, you'll shine. Your turn. Share your story. Comment below if you've ever felt held back by the people meant to lift you up. Let's create a space where ambition isn't something to be ashamed of, but something to be celebrated, because your dreams are valid, your voice matters, and your story, especially the messy, brave parts, deserves to be told.